More DC news coming our way, yeah. Superman, Shazam 2, and Black Adam announcement breakdown, Justice League, Easter eggs. This is coming from the channel Emergency Awesome. And then we'll talk about it afterwards because I was like, oh, Shazam 2 and Black Adam. Wasn't aware of any of the news in that department. Let's get into it, see what's in store. Henry Cavill returning. That'd be really awesome. Love what he was morphing into by the end of Justice League. I listen to the trailer number 2 song when I work out. Does it make you feel super? That's funny, John.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my new Henry Cavill Superman Man of Steel video. They just confirmed that he's actually coming back for more movies. We heard rumors earlier, but now it's finally been confirmed. And we found out which movies he's coming back for. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe.
I was so happy when he was on that Vero stream. I was like, yeah, buddy.
All your Superman DC movie predictions on the video. So just working our way down the list here, starting with number 5. Because of all the Justice League Snyder Cut hype that's been happening the past week, and Zack Snyder using a Man of Steel Superman rewatch party with Henry Cavill to announce the project, a lot of us assumed that it was implied he was at least in the process of trying to work out a new deal with Warner Brothers to come back for more Superman movies or more Man of Steel movies, or at least show up as Superman in some DC movie in some way. Because he'd always said ever since Justice League that he's not done with the Superman character, he has tons of ideas, he's been pitching Warner Brothers for a while now on a Man of Steel sequel. Then just a couple hours ago, as I'm making this video,
been pitching ideas.
Confirmed. He is in the process of hammering out a deal for multiple new Superman crossovers in new DC movies. It sounds like some of them would be bigger roles than others, but we also found out which movies those are going to be.
Now's the perfect time for him to return,
right now,
man.
The official reports are saying that Warner Brothers is still not publicly acknowledging that they're developing Man of Steel 2 or another solo Superman movie of any kind. So supposedly the new deal Henry Cavill is making is to cross over with their upcoming movies.
Like Shazam.
Shazam 2, Black Adam, and then Aquaman 2. There's also the Flash movie too, because they're doing Flashpoint. Obviously, alternate versions of characters would come in handy. Superman would fit in pretty well with that theme. Oh my god, I created the Injustice Superman. What have I done now? And even though it goes without saying, it wouldn't make sense for him to do Wonder Woman 1984 since they already finished the movie and it's set before Superman's pod crashed to Earth. He's not going to show up during the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, but they'd already tried to get him to cameo at the end of the first Shazam movie, so we already knew that they were trying to cross him over with other new movies. The Rock also has history with Superman in the Black Adam movie that predates the Shazam movie post-credit scene, and Jason Momoa has been trying to get everybody to cameo in his sequel. So 3, right now the DC movie release order works like this.
Maybe on one of those HBO Max shows.
Then they do Shazam 2, then they do Aquaman 2. Shazam 2 isn't supposed to be a big Black Adam crossover, maybe a post-credit scene teaser at the end, but Zachary Levi said they don't have big plans for Black Adam.
Dude, in part 3, man.
They're so focused on this Magic Lands plot that I've talked about in my previous Shazam videos. But because Superman and Shazam have so much history in the comics, and Billy, Freddy, the rest of the Shazam League idolize him, it makes sense that they try to use Superman in Shazam 2 at least as a guide to help Billy with problems that he can't solve with magic or punching. Remember, he's just a high school kid, so there's a lot that he does not know about being a superhero. Superman even kind of becomes
this was the first Shazam movie I ever saw. Was this one?
I wouldn't call him a father figure to him, but he does give off a lot of dad vibes when he's around the Shazam.
Like 20 minutes long.
And because of that Shazam Superman scene at the end of the movie, we know that Billy canonically already knows Superman. And based on the logic of this scene, there would have had to have been at least a small time jump between this scene at the Rock of Eternity, where they're putting the 7 deadly sins back in their prison. Then at some point before the cafeteria scene, Billy probably was approached by Superman or even the full Justice League, who just saw what happened in Philadelphia. And as you would expect Superman or the Justice League to do, fly their way to Philadelphia to see what the hell was going on and find out what exactly was going on with this high school kid that happens to look like an adult. Zachary Levi said he's been campaigning to try and get Wonder Woman in Shazam 2 as well, but I don't know if that's going to wind up happening, whatever their plans for Wonder Woman 3 are, because they're definitely making Wonder Woman 3, so she might be busy doing that.
I love how the cast members are trying to get them to cross over. They're the ones opting for it.
Superman isn't a huge character during the movie. He could still give Billy some sage advice and help train him a little. Superman is weak against magical attacks, but he can help the Shazam League with all their other non-traditional abilities like super strength, speed, flight.
Superman.
What is this?
Most of the stuff happening in Shazam 2 is more about what Dr.
What is that?
The
shot and everything.
Which is only related to Superman stuff, so I'm not expecting Superman to be a huge part of Shazam 2. But number 2, Superman versus Black Adam. So the news report mentions crossing over
you got to
the
build
first
up to that,
Black Adam
man.
movie, which is a bit of a surprise.
No.
You
got to build up to that.
Henry Cavill's management company is run by The Rock's ex-wife, who also still manages The Rock.
The Rocks.
So they've known each other for a long time. They're already bros in real life. And even before Henry Cavill signed with their team, The Rock had been trying to pitch Superman versus Black Adam to Warner Brothers for a while.
Really? I didn't know about that.
A while ago in my Black Adam video, but Boss Logic said a couple years ago, after The Rock had started to talk more about the Black Adam movie openly, he contacted him to create some cool fan art of Black Adam fighting Superman. If you've never seen it, there's actually a great animated movie where Superman effectively goes up against Black Adam. He gets his ass handed to him, but it's still a really
but then
cool
Shazam saves
movie.
the day.
You are my physical match, but I sense one critical difference.
I hope Dwayne Johnson does that voice.
Last year we heard about the Justice Society storyline that they were planning on doing in the Black Adam movie. There wasn't any mention of Superman anywhere in that script, but it sounds like what's changed now is all the Justice League Snyder Cut stuff that's been going on since last November has healed whatever wound there was between Warner Brothers and Henry Cavill. Remember when they announced that they were planning on doing a Supergirl movie instead of doing Man of Steel 2? There were a lot of reports that the studio is actually just using the press to bargain with Henry Cavill's people because Henry Cavill wanted more money, but they didn't want to pay him because of what happened with Justice League. So apparently they probably never planned on doing a Supergirl movie, and they were just holding that over his head in order to get him to take a lower paycheck.
Aww.
And I think before the whole Justice League debacle happened when it came out in theaters, I think originally Warner Brothers never had plans to do Superman versus Black Adam. But when Justice League did so poorly and the studio changed all their DC movie plans, maybe they just warmed up a little to the idea of a more hardcore version of Superman inside the Black Adam movies. But before today, before they made this big announcement, my assumption is that we wouldn't see Superman in a Black Adam movie, at least until one of the sequels. So number 1, I just did a Black Adam video a couple days ago. I'll link it at the end of this, but I talk about the Justice Society storyline that's supposed to happen during that movie, at least in the current version of the script as it exists now. If they're talking about putting Superman in the Black Adam movie, he obviously probably would not be part of the Justice Society, just because, within the context of the DC timeline, the Justice League still exists in present day. They're still operating all over the world. The whole thing with the Justice Society in the Black Adam movie is that they're reforming in present day because they fought him in the past at some point. And even though we haven't seen the Snyder Cut ending of Justice League yet, during the end of that movie, they sort of implied that he's back working at the Daily Planet and things are relatively back to normal.
Implied? It's pretty
As
obvious.
for Superman in Aquaman 2, that just feels like it would be the bro-down to end all DC bro-downs. Aquaman and Superman don't spend a ton of time hanging out in the comics by themselves unless it's a bigger Justice League team-up story. But they're both children of two worlds, they're both treated like outsiders, their whole lives never really belonging anywhere, but somehow they feel responsible for protecting everyone, protecting the Earth as their chosen home. So Superman going to Atlantis just feels like a fun premise, even if it's only for a little bit of that movie.
I wonder,
Other than Black Manta and
there's
Dr.
not much
Stevenson,
interaction between
because of that post-credits scene,
Superman
we don't really know
and
who the other
Aquaman
villains
interaction
of
in
Aquaman
any of
2
these,
are going
huh?
to be, or what the real threat will be. Black Manta by himself is one of Aquaman's main villains, but just by himself, he isn't powerful enough to take on Aquaman with his new upgraded armor and trident. But Aquaman 2 is a little further off, so it's going to be a while before we get more news about that. And in terms of the Flash movie crossover, everyone's seen the original Flashpoint storyline. That version of Superman's pod was actually captured by the US government, and he was kept in captivity, so he winds up being this really altered, weakened version of Superman. I don't think that they would do something like that in the Flash movie. They already said that they're going to be changing the original comic book version of Flashpoint, and they're not going to be doing all the Justice League characters in that. We don't know if there's going to be any kind of Batman or Wonder Woman cameo, but the way they've been talking about the Flash movie, it wouldn't be quite so dark as an Injustice or traditional Flashpoint type of story.
That is such a good adaptation.
From the
If you guys haven't seen it,
storyline.
it's so good.
But even though the new contract Henry Cavill is signing right now is just for a couple big crossovers, I think if those go well, then they'll start talking about doing more Superman solo movies. So it's not like they'll never do Man of Steel 2 or whatever they want to call it, Man of Tomorrow. Henry Cavill has actually talked about his ideas for more Superman movies, and for the past couple of years, he was pitching new Superman movies to Warner Brothers for whatever reason they didn't want to make. But what'll happen is if we get any more news or concrete details about which movies and what he'd be doing in those movies, of course I'll do a video about it. Zack Snyder will be releasing a bunch more Snyder Cut stuff throughout the rest of the year as they start to work on that movie. So don't worry, there'll still be plenty of big DC stuff happening, and we have Wonder Woman 1984 coming out in August too.
Yeah, we'll see.
Click here for the Justice League Snyder Cut teaser trailer, and click here for my new Black Adam teaser and plot synopsis breakdown.
Ooh,
Thank you so much.
So much in here.
Stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.
Ooh, let's talk about that. In my opinion, I think now is the absolute perfect time for Henry Cavill to at least, get some type of confirmation that he is returning. Because post Justice League, he's had a couple of really great things happen outside of the whole, Superman presence. Because he's done, obviously, The Witcher. He was the villain in Mission Impossible Fallout. He's had a lot of great work since his time as Superman. And then, when he showed up on the Vero app, and then, a little bit prior before that, I brought this up in our Snyder Cut vid, he seemed like he didn't really care if there was a Snyder Cut or not. So for him to show up in that stream and really should be the main face for showing the support out of all the Justice League members, I thought was an amazing thing, and it just got me really excited at the opportunity for him to return as Superman. I guess the question that remains, though, what kind of Superman will he ultimately be? I imagine that no matter what, with Zack Snyder's Justice League, he was supposed to at least arc somewhat into the Superman that we saw him at the end of the Joss Whedon edition, where he's a little bit more like the traditional Superman. Because I could see the discussion being brought up of, well, is he going to be more in tune with how he's supposed to be in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which won't come out for a year from now, or is he supposed to be more like Joss Whedon's? And I think the way they both arc should fairly be the same. I know that in Zack Snyder's, he's supposed to go into the black suit and be a lot more dark. Eventually, he should be back to being, good Superman. I just think right now would be absolutely perfect for him to return. And I had no idea that he was pitching his own ideas for what a Man of Steel sequel ought to be.
Yeah, that was kind of the funnest part of this whole video, is learning how much the cast seems to care about these characters and wants to pitch these stories. We've already heard about Ezra Miller doing that, but then The Rock doing that, and Henry Cavill, and that's inspiring to me. I haven't loved any of the takes of his Superman on the big screen just yet, but it feels nice to know that he cares that much about it. And I feel like the passage of time is a very important factor here, because part of the big complaint about the DCEU at first was no guys, slow down, take your time. And I feel like with all the controversy and then all the course correction and stuff, and with the recent announcements, it is a good time, because we've had enough of a moment for the culture to sit around and go, you know what, Henry Cavill still deserves that shot to really do his definitive take on Superman. It's like if Ben Affleck didn't come back to Batman, it's fine, because a lot of people agree that, the BVS, while it's a flawed movie, his Batman's great. Whereas, Henry Cavill could still use that opportunity, I think, to really nail Superman for everybody, you know?
Well, yeah, it's because I think Man of Steel especially has received significantly more love over time. I've always liked the movie, and I've always appreciated what Henry Cavill was going for. He was never my favorite Superman. He was one of my favorite parts of Joss Whedon's Justice League, though. Just where you see him arc into by the end of that movie, and seeing the charisma and charm that guy has, he can pull off the more traditional Superman kind of portrayal. Probably still keeping in tune with that more of a vulnerable, emotional experience that we've seen him aim for in Man of Steel and BVS. Now the question is this idea of not doing a Man of Steel 2 right away, but having him cameo or appear alongside other characters in one of these movies. I think it's cool how the cast has been talking about, Zachary Levi wants Gal Gadot to appear in his Shazam movie, and Dwayne Johnson wants Henry Cavill's Superman to appear in the Black Adam movie, which would be cool. All those sound great. The one that makes the most sense to me would be him appearing in Shazam 2. Yeah. Especially because of the way that movie ended, and just my personal association with my knowledge of Shazam and how that linked. My first introduction to Shazam was the animated movie that was being referenced here with Shazam versus Black Adam. That would just be the one that excites me the most, and then him sort of being a bit of a mentor to the Billy Batson character would be something that would really work. On the flip side, though, it's like Black Adam versus Superman. I would want that. I want there to be a build up to that. I don't want it to just be the first Black Adam movie. I think a part 2 at minimum, ideally a part 3, but at minimum a part 2. At part 2, the one that would actually excite me the most, is it just sounds the most weird, and I can't really recall much interaction. Maybe in the Zack Snyder Justice League we'll get more of it, but the one that excites me the most is the idea of Aquaman and Superman bonding with one another, because I've seen a lot of them having fun on a red carpet together of Jason Momoa and Henry Cavill, but in terms of Superman and Aquaman hanging out, nothing really comes to mind for me unless I'm like completely forgetting something. That would be the most engaging one, considering they're both considering like the loose bro personality of Aquaman, and then kind of the more upstanding, upright citizen portrayal of Superman. It'd be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, totally. I think that would actually be a great way to lead back up to both, an eventual Superman versus Black Adam movie and a Man of Steel proper follow-up sequel is have him. Yeah, I think that's a good way also to endear us to the character in ways that perhaps the previous films haven't given us so much a chance to. And so, yeah, even having him in Shazam 2, maybe introducing Black Adam in Shazam 2, and then having some kind of thing where you have a villain appear in 2 different installments of a franchise. Maybe Shazam can't finish the job, so he has to go over and fight Superman or something like that. Yeah. Just seems like it spells a lot of interesting possibilities for this universe, and it's taking my mind away from the Marvel blueprint, which is nice, because I think this is another opportunity for DC to go out and really put their stamp on what they're doing in the films and all that. And for Henry Cavill to just jump back into a couple appearances and sequels coming up, I think that would be really fun.
Although I do think that we have to get a definitive Man of Steel 2. Even if you don't call it Man of Steel 2, it has to be some type of solo Superman movie. That is something that is needed. I'm all for all these like jumping around into maybe 1 or 2 of these other DC movies. Potentially he might be, coming back for, it seems like he will be, for some type of additional photography or shooting for Zack Snyder's Justice League on HBO Max. That being said, we need a definitive sequel, I think, to really put the stamp on it.
Well, and that's the portrayal of his Superman that I think the most people agree on and rally around is Man of Steel. It's the one that the most people, I think, can say, yeah, that was pretty good, It's an interesting take.
And bottom line, like, if he's to appear in Aquaman, I'd want it to be in Aquaman 3, because they ended it with, David Kane and Stephen Shin at the end of Aquaman 1, and then even a cliffhanger with Ocean Master there. So I think there's enough, meat there to make a proper sequel. Wonder Woman 3 could actually work,
They're well connected in comics,
but we'll see. All right, guys, what do you think about the thought of Henry Cavill returning as the Man of Steel in the DC universe? Leave your thoughts down below. Make sure to subscribe to The Real Reject. Subscribe to Emergency Awesome if you haven't done so already. Click that notification bell on our channel so you get notified whenever we got a video up. Last but not least, Zach Feifel, you recently pledged to our Patreon page, and if you've seen any of these Patron of the Day shout-outs, normally I like to have a lot of fun, go into a lot of detail about who you are. Now, you're pretty new, so I don't have all the necessary ingredients here to give you the best shout-out. I know you're from Pennsylvania. And that's about it. And your name's Zach, like Zack Snyder. So it works to put you in this video for the shout out. And your last name, Feifel, kind of sounds like falafel. And I love falafels.
Those are great.
So that works just as well. I know that right now you're really asking us to cover this Red versus Blue series from Rooster Teeth. It's a heavy consideration whether or not we should cover it moving forward. We always do polls once we're done with shows on Patreon. But we'll let you know, buddy. In the meantime, I want to get to know you better. I want to be able to give you better shout outs. So please, Zach Falafel, message me back as soon as you can so we can get to know each other better, and we should get some Zanku chicken together because they got the best falafel, Zach.
Oh, yeah.